Hello, hello, and welcome to another edition of Mindful Techie Tuesdays on LinkedIn Live. I am so excited to be coming with you with another conversation that is all about helping us to be better at being mindful and productive and intentional in a virtual world, in a digital world. And so it is with that I'm excited about today's guest. But before we dive into that, I need a favor from you. I need you to like, to love, to share this particular post, this video, tag someone who you think could benefit from today's conversation. And I'm sure they would appreciate you for that. And we certainly appreciate you for helping us to spread this conversation. So with that being said, I am excited about today's topic. We will be talking about how to network authentically in the virtual world, how to network authentically in a virtual world. It's not lost on any of us that we've been spending a lot of time the last several months working remotely. And that has changed how we, in some ways, build and sustain relationships as they are mediated by technology. And so my guest today, a very special friend, my sister, my accountability partner, and just an all-around awesome person, Monique LaRue Wilson. I'll let her say a little bit more about who she is, but she is known as the Mindful Connector. She's an author, she's a consultant, and she is just amazing. So Monique, welcome to Mindful Techie Tuesdays.
Hey, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. All of those wonderful, great things and attributes you shared about me. Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be able to, have this conversation with you so that we can just talk about how to really do this in a way that is full of love and energy and, just make some positive connections for people. So I'm sure we'll dive in, but yeah, I'm excited. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Awesome. Well, happy to have you and excited to see you in your new environment. And so as we get
Yay.
started, I like to really just check in and see how folks are doing. I think it's important when we're having conversations to acknowledge that we're not having this conversation in a vacuum. We're having this conversation at a particular point in time where there's stuff happening in the world, there's stuff happening in our lives. So let me ask you this. I want to hear more about how you describe who you are, but how is Monique right now in this moment? How are you doing given everything happening in the world right now?
When I shared information about coming on today, I was talking about being full. And I would say that this year has just been the time in my life where just fullness is just abounding. It's like, and when I say that, I mean that in a very good way. Clearly, there are tons of ways you can perceive what fullness means to someone based on how they explain that to you.
Yeah.
But today in this environment, I'm full. I'm full because there's so much opportunities for growth. There's so much opportunities to connect to people you haven't connected to in a long time, or new people. So, I'm in that place. And so right now, as much as I've got all this fullness going on in various capacities, yeah, I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I will. Yeah. So that's it.
Well, awesome. Well, we're glad that you're doing well. We're glad that you are embracing the newness and the change and disruption of life. I love that fullness.
Yeah.
It's full and just pregnant with opportunity and possibilities. So I absolutely love that. It's all a matter of perspective and how we're choosing to respond. So I so appreciate you for sharing that. So I described you as the mindful connector, as an author, as a consultant. Give us a little bit of meat on the bone. Like, so who is Monique LaRue? What do you want people to know you as for the purpose of this conversation?
That's a really powerful question, only because every time someone asks me that question, I hesitate because I'm trying to pull all the different things together to try to make up who this person is. And and I really, it's been difficult to just find a thing. You know, you've got your elevator pitch and everybody's got it all down packed, like this is who I am. And, and I am so totally like thinking about, okay, what should I say? Because I'm so many things. So I will start by saying, just to really simplify it, I am a connector. And when I share that with people, it's like, oh, Monique, anybody can connect people. I mean, you can connect people, you can meet people and just introduce people to people. And, it's all about, they say it's just all about, referrals is really what I usually get when I say I'm a connector. And so I'm saying it's so much more than that, though. It's a deeper place of being for me. It's something that I believe is a gift because I've been doing it all my life. My mom would say it to me when I was a kid. And so I'm a connector first. Outside of that, I'm a consultant and I consult in the areas that bring me joy and love, which is the nonprofit work, which speaks to my heart, especially when we're talking about, organizations that are doing things that are helping other people step up their lives. So I'm a consultant in that area. I do marketing consulting as well. That's my education. My expertise is in that area. And then I'm a founder. And I've founded a lot of great things. And this year, a couple of things just kind of opened up and opportunities to kick off a magazine. I've done that before. Another opportunity to create a fabulous product, which is a solution for my mom who is struggling with dementia right now. Just, so just a full creative bundle of that's who I am, which is why I struggle.
All good. Well, we get it. So there's no need to struggle. We're just slow.
Don't.
Yeah, exactly. So we hear you. You are a connector and you are a creative. And
I
so
am.
tell us more concretely. Can you give us an example? Because I want to ground the conversation today in this. When you say connector, can you give us an example of what you mean?
So, if we talk about connecting, especially when it comes to this virtual world, right? I typically like connecting with people when I can see them. I can, feel how they're, what's going on in their lives. It's an energy thing. But now in the virtual world, you can't really feel that as much. So I think the connection it works the same in the virtual world, but I've made so many new critical connections this year virtually. I have worked, had an opportunity to meet the folks from Small Business Grit Summit Series because of a virtual connection. Mary Lou Dayhill and Jennifer Crawford. Also got the opportunity in that to meet a woman, Jillian Burden, who we really connected on a very deeper level as she presented this profit first situation. It just resonated with me. So I've been making tons of great connections for all the things that I'm working on in my life. So those are just some of the concrete things, like reaching out on LinkedIn and actually just, connecting with people. And so those things have been helpful.
Awesome.
Those things have been helpful.
So thank you for sharing that. So we have a little bit more context, and you've alluded to some of the things that are different now that we're sort of working remotely and we're managing during COVID. You mentioned that you are doing more connecting through LinkedIn. Are there other ways that the way that you connect with people has changed as a result of COVID?
Well, I mean, I don't believe how I connect has changed. So let me bring some more context to that. When I connect with someone, my first thing is to figure out the why I'm connecting, whether I'm doing it on LinkedIn virtually or whether I'm doing it going to an event and meeting people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that hasn't really changed. I think, So I think that really I haven't changed anything, really. I don't think it is because my process has been the same all my life, which is to start with the why I'm trying to connect. And then from the why, that's how you can start, really solidifying how you're going to step into a connection, which I call critical connections.
Awesome. Okay, so this is gold here. So you talk about that. If I'm sort of reframing what you're saying, the the platforms or the tools or the ways in which we're actually facilitating those connections might be different right now, but how we're doing that is not different, right? So starting with the how in order to build those critical connections. So uh, I want to ask you, as we pivot to talk about how this connects to your method, the mindful connector method, what is a critical connection?
So, a critical connection really, and from my perspective, is when you think about critical, the word. So, um, I look at it as someone who is vital in my life. It's a critical opportunity. It's a critical, there's a reason why I'm making the connection. So all of those things make for me a critical connection. A critical connection is someone who you'll be able to share a mutually beneficial arrangement with, where there is growth and potential for growth on both sides, right?
Okay.
So for me, that's why your why is so important, because now you've got to assess what's critical about that, meaning you've got to find the thing that's beneficial mutually, whether it be a work connection, whether it be a person, whether it be a job opportunity. You want to do that. So those things really are critical connections for me, and all of the criticalness starts with how you get to the point of determining what's critical.
Okay.
So a critical connection for me is Amico Marquette Whitlock. There are mutually beneficial things going on in that relationship on both sides. That's critical for me. It's not a passive transactional type of connection. And so that's the difference between what I deem as critical and what's more so a transactional, maybe networking opportunity.
Aha. So we're not talking. So folks that are tuned in, we're not talking about transaction, right? We're not talking about
Yeah.
the folks that keep sending me LinkedIn requests under the guise of being helpful, talking about how I can help you grow your business, right? They're trying to sell a product, right? Uh,
Exactly.
right. So
Exactly.
we're talking about mutually beneficial and doing it in an authentic way. So I think this is key.
Yeah.
And I just want to plant the seed because I'm a little annoyed by these LinkedIn requests. I want to talk to you about these. But let's talk about the mindful connector method.
Yeah.
Mindful connector method. So you started to tell us about this process and how I guess a regular person can follow this in a practical way because you sort
Yeah.
of flow through this, but you put it together in a practical way for this the everyday person.
Yeah.
And I want to clarify. So this method that you're about to talk about, this is if you're job searching, if you are looking for a business partnership, if you're looking to build a romantic relationship, like what context are we able to use this in?
Well, so let me just be clear about I am not speaking, I don't have the expertise on the romantic relationships.
Okay, so
so
we're clarifying. Okay, so we're
so let's
clarifying.
just clarify that right now,
Okay.
because I often get that question, right? So, yeah, you're a connector. What do you mean by that? But I am talking about professional relationships.
Okay, bingo.
Let me just give you just a brief, just history, right? So years ago, I worked at a nonprofit organization, and I was tasked with working with large software companies, mentoring program. Okay, so I'm not sharing names right now, but so I was tasked with taking 5 students from a local technical college in the area, and I was to pair them with CIOs from large Fortune 500 companies
What's the CIO?
in in the area. Right, CIOs, chief
So
information officers.
okay, chief
Right,
information officers. Okay.
right. I know they probably don't use that anymore. I think they use CTO. I'm telling my age right now. So, and anyway, CTOs. So just quickly, it was a year-long mentoring program. What I found in that situation, which is why the mindful connector method even came about, because I was doing this naturally.
Yes.
The student and the CTO could not find the mutual thing to make the mentoring program work. Like I was coaching CTOs on how to actually connect with these 5 students at this technical college. So I said, there's got to be a better way. So here comes the mindful connector method. Now, to just be transparent, it wasn't called the mindful connector. That came out of my growth and my evolution as a connector, as I, grew in this space. But the method came so that I could help create a practical step-by-step format to help these 5 students go through the process of connecting critically to these CTOs in this year-long program. That was really the premise and the foundation of it all. I had to say that because that's where it came from initially, even though I do it naturally. I just really wanted to help those students really have the impact that they needed to have.
So I want to dive deeper into this, and I really want to plant the seed. I want to ask you about, as when we think about power dynamics, I think traditionally we think that in a mentor-mentee relationship that the mentee has nothing to offer. So I want to come back to that and get your thoughts on that and how you make that work in this scenario. But before we do that, can you briefly outline the steps in your mindful connector method?
Yeah, so very simple. I kept it very simple. So it's cultivating critical connections, right? So the method has 3 steps. Cultivate, step 1.
Cultivate, okay.
Step 2, assessing what's critical. Okay, so there's a process for that. And 3, really finding the best way of sustaining that connection once the connection is made. So cultivate, 1, assessing what's critical, 2, and figuring out and determining what's the best way to sustain that connection. Very simple, right?
Okay.
The bulk of that, and I call it the 80-20, using that principle, the bulk of that is going to happen in the cultivate stage. What happens in you assessing what's critical and, determining, how you're going to stay connected is one thing, but it all starts with the cultivating side of things. And I could go in depth into that, but we don't have to do that here today. But it really starts with you thinking about your why in the cultivate stage, which is why that's so important. So that's cultivate critical connections, 3 steps.
Okay.
In the method.
Okay, perfect. And so, you're right. We don't have time to dive into we can't do a masterclass right now, but people can get the book,
exactly.
which we'll talk about later. People can get the book if they want to dive deeper into that. They can contact you for your programs that you're offering. But so let's go back to one of the scenarios that's probably most common for folks right now is many folks are, probably out of work, underemployed, or maybe they're fully employed, gainfully employed, but the current circumstances have had them rethink what they're doing and how they're spending their life, right? And so they want to be doing something else professionally. Using your process, where does one start with making that type of transition?
Okay, so we said we weren't going to dive into it, but we're going to have to talk about it a little bit, right? So I have what I call this connections, intention, vision. Okay, it's a lot of words going on there, but basically it's a vision statement for why you want to connect.
Bingo.
So my point is for people who are in this time experiencing what they're experiencing, whether it's joblessness, underemployment, whatever, is that they take the time to figure out and write out, why am I connecting? Like that question is so important to me right now. Like everybody on my LinkedIn should just answer that question for me. Why are we connected?
Yes.
Because if you go there, because I get chill bumps every time I say it, it really does matter. So I say that to the people who are, looking for opportunities. First, figure out why you're connecting, why you want that particular job. Is it aligned with who you are as a person? Talk to yourself about that process. What does that look like? Write it out. It will continue to change and evolve because that's what vision statements do as you grow. But you got to know what that is first before you start stepping out looking for jobs and opportunities and connecting with people on LinkedIn and asking for referrals for some job. That's the first step. Yes.
Okay. So first step, really practical, know your why and get to your why by actually just asking yourself why you're connecting, actually write it out. Okay, perfect.
Write out that statement.
So next step, what's the next step?
So the next step now is once you've done that, right? And you find yourself in a connection scenario, whether it's in person and or online, you want to meet somebody. If that connection happens and you just go on, for example, I reach out to someone, I say, hey, I love your organization. I'd like to have 15 minutes with you so we could talk about culture because that's important to me. Leadership and people who look like me is important.
Yes.
Once you get that conversation, once that person says, yeah, sure, I'll talk to you for 15 minutes. Now you've got to assess what's critical about this connection.
Okay.
So what that means is there mutually beneficial agreement between you and this person?
Yes.
Okay. Because just because you've been invited to have the conversation doesn't mean you're a critical connection.
Yes.
Okay. So that part has to happen. So outside of you just meeting this person and thinking that, oh, okay, now that I'm connected with this person and I've got another person on my 1,000 people list on LinkedIn, I can now reach out to that person when I see an opportunity at their job and they're going to plug me in. And that is not how that's going to work.
Okay, so I think this is where a lot of people hit the brick wall, right? Because they think that, okay, so I made this critical connection or I've identified a person and now it's supposed to be smooth sailing from here, right? Like it's supposed to be like, green light. So what?
No.
Okay, so tell us more about that.
No, because assessing what's critical takes time. I mean, you're cultivating for a period of time. You're connecting with people, you met somebody, you're talking to them, but you're not at the critical connection stage yet. You haven't gotten to that point. When it's critical, trust you will know when it's critical. It's a mutual thing. It's a thing that says, you know what? I've got it. I got you. I call it a heart thing, right? It's the critical piece. It's the vital piece. You don't get to the critical until you know somebody a little bit more. So sometimes it happens automatically. Most times, though, for most people, you have to build that relationship. And that's where authenticity comes in. You're not just going to meet somebody. It's possible. I'm not saying that it's not, but most likely you're going to have to build more relationships so they get to know you, they get to trust you, and that makes it critical because now there's a mutual thing happening.
So let me ask you this. So I assume part of building authenticity and trust is about being upfront about why you are connecting in the first place, right?
Exactly.
So is it okay then in that context if someone is like looking for a job to lead with that, or like what are your thoughts?
Yes. So I had an opportunity actually that's not I was about to say a few years ago, but I mean it definitely is important that you just tell the truth, because you're going to get an honest answer right away. I'm looking for an opportunity. I don't advise people to do that up front. I think it's counterintuitive to the mindful connector method, but sometimes it's like, I need to ask you if there's an opportunity at your job, and you go ahead, you ask them up front, and you will get whatever response you're going to get there. So yes, being authentic about that is important, but I think that's why you have to sit back and think about your why, because you'll go into that situation differently. As much as you need a job, and that's important though. So I will say there is a way to make connections. There is a way to step into a situation when you want to meet somebody. You don't want to go in there with a state of desperation, a state of people pick that up. So you know, they already know you want something from them. So doing the work in the beginning of talking about your why, writing out that statement, and really going deep and understanding why you're making connections is really going to help how that feels when you meet someone. And if I just talked about myself, I normally will just want to hear what somebody else has going on in their world. I could probably be jobless, but 9 times out of 10, I'm not going to step into an environment looking and asking somebody for a job. I'm going to find out first, what is it that I can do for you? Do I have any value I can share? And then I will go from there. And usually it comes all the way back full circle and an opportunity lands in my lap.
So find how you can create value, be of service, but then you can also be upfront about what you might be looking for. But once you've established the point that you are at, the way in which you're able to add value, is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, I mean you want to go in with the other person in mind. So, and this is a challenge, because when you are in a place of I need a job, you're jobless, you got to pay the bills. I don't advise people to connect with people when you feel that way. Okay. In the place of, I feel like I just need a job, desperation. Now, you may need a job and you have to look for one, but the feeling, that is probably not the best way to introduce yourself to someone, because they can feel it, they get it. And if they're not already a connection for you, they're going to say, yeah, I'm good, I don't have anything, or maybe in some possible universe, you can, and it happens. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm rolling.
No, all good. So cultivate, assess. So give us the last step, and then I want to come back to this mentor-mentee relationship that you shared with us. So give us the last step in the process.
So the last step in the process is really sustaining that connection and how that happens. So one of my first critical connections, and I call this the critical 9. So I have a critical 9. I talk about it in my book. It's part of building a pyramid of 9 people who will sustain you throughout your career, professional career, right? Those people will change. Right. So met a CEO years ago, one of my critical connections. I was responsible for staying connected to him because of his status, right? So not that I wasn't. Dynamic. Yes, okay. Right? So I stayed connected to him, number one, because he had more value for me at that moment than I had for him. Mm-hmm. However, he made it very clear that it was mutual, because he stepped out and made connections for me out of his own will, doing interview opportunities, writing reference letters. He did not have to do that, but he saw something that made that okay. That was a critical connection for me, right? So because I am not a CEO, he's busy, he's traveling, I made sure that every 6 months, I reached out to him and I said, hey, Mr. B, how are you doing? How's the family? Just connecting, keeping in touch. Over the years, we stayed in touch for a very long time. And I have several CEO type folks that I am still very connected to right now and can pick up the phone and have a conversation. We still go to lunch every now and again. It's a great feeling. But yeah, so that's how you sustain that. There's a process. There's a way to really keep that going.
All right, awesome. So you gave us some really concrete examples and some ways that we can do that. Of course, we can always dive deeper. But let's go back to this mentor-mentee relationship. And the reason I want to go back to this is because of the power dynamic, right? I think there's a perception sometimes that if you are the job seeker or if you are the mentee seeking a mentor, that you have nothing of value to add. And so in this program that you set up with the students and the CTOs, can you describe how you work with the mentees to understand what value they were bringing to the CTOs?
Okay, so This is so close. I'm not gonna cry, people. I'm not, okay? Because this was the reason why this even exists today. It really started with a mindset. It had nothing to do with who they were as individuals. It's what they felt about themselves that caused this mentee-mentor relationship to kind of feel or function in the way that it was functioning in. Like, so I needed to help them understand their value as an individual contributor in the relationship, in the mentee-mentor relationship, right? Meaning they're learning from you. Yes, they're CTOs, but they're in this because they agreed to be in this relationship. And so there are things they can learn from you, but you have to be in a place and you have to feel or be ready in a mindset in order to do that. So there were quite a few complex situations that I didn't know I was going to be dealing with. I mean, even from the CTO level, I mean, like sometimes they did not have any idea how to deal with these folks who were from a different socioeconomic background. I mean, that's just, so that already created a dynamic that was like, okay, I'm not worthy, or, and maybe that's not the right word, but I don't match up to this CTO. So we already were facing that. So just really just helping them understand their why was really the big thing, and to understand why they were important in this, and that eventually they would get to a place where, I mean, it would, if it weren't equal, they would understand and believe that they were equal in the relationship, and then both would be able to benefit. So, I mean, it was a year long, I called it a case study because that's really what it was. So they found that, and they kept it going for a year, but, hopefully there was some growth. I'm not connected with those five. I am connected with them, but I haven't talked to them a whole lot. They've gone on to do other great professional things, and so that's a great thing.
Well, awesome. So, and I appreciate you sharing that. So, let's go back to LinkedIn and how we, because LinkedIn, I don't want to focus on LinkedIn per se as, the platform, but more so this is the way that many of us are connecting, right? And so I receive lots of LinkedIn connection requests. Generally I accept, all of the connection requests, and I respond with a simple question, uh, you know, have our paths crossed before? I'm looking forward to stay connected. However, there are instances where someone is reaching out where it's clear that it's a transactional thing, right? So someone they're a sales lead generator, for example, they're reaching out, and they're wanting to connect, and it's not really a genuine connection, right? Because it's clear that they have an agenda, and they're not really connecting for the value that you provide, right? They're connecting primarily because they have something that they want you to give them, right?
Yeah.
So how, I guess the question I have is, um, really around rejection, right? So I guess one way we can go this route is, if you're the person and you're trying to grow your business and you're a sales leads person, maybe you think this is the right way to go about it, and you're getting rejected. So how do you deal with the rejection? Number one, then number two, what might be a better approach for something like that?
So I have been getting the same types of requests. And in the beginning, when I first started using LinkedIn, I was big on that. I knew everybody in my LinkedIn portfolio. I knew everybody. I had worked with them, and I only started with like 250, but I knew all 250. I could pick up the phone, connect to them. I knew them. So that meant that if someone came to me and said, Monique, I want to meet John. And John is like, and I'm like, you know what? I can connect with you on John. I can connect John to you on LinkedIn, but I can do one thing better. I can reach out to him via text and tell him, hey, I got this person. I know whatever. Right.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. The folks that are connecting now, I don't know you, right? So if I invite you into my portfolio and someone reaches out to me and said, Monique, Mark, do you know Mark? I don't know Mark. I just connected with Mark because Mark, this is why I don't do that. I just connected with Mark because he wanted to reach out to me because of something. Case in point, I got a connection yesterday. I said, no, thank you. I mean, the profile said something totally different, something I might have been interested in. So I was interested. And then once I connected, the email said something totally different.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the message to me was like, oh, I'm selling such and such. And I was like, no, thank you. And that was it. And then he said, thank you for, connecting with me. However, he won't remain a connection because I don't know him. I don't know. It's good for me to know why we're connecting.
Yes.
It may not, there are different strategies these days about how to use LinkedIn and why you should accept everybody because all of this wonderful stuff. And if it's working for you, great. But I know in my situation, understanding why you're connecting with me is important. And so I typically will not engage with someone who's selling something. But some people have gotten really good with that. I think that's the first part of that. What's the second part?
So around the rejection piece. So I think part of it, if you're the salesperson that you're getting the rejections, or even earlier on, using the scenario, the person that's doing the job searching, you walked us through a process and it sort of presumed, I think for the sake of the discussion, that you made the connection and then you moved on to be able to nurture it and so on. But what happens when you consistently have people saying no? What do you do at that particular point?
Yeah, I basically I stop because, if you're getting rejections consistently, then obviously that person isn't aligned with the work that you are trying to sell, which is why it's so important, right? We talk about this, Miko, about really, aligning yourself with work and or business that is aligned with who you are as a person. I think sales happen differently when that is a true case. It's the critical connection. It's the mutual beneficial, agreement between two things, two parties, to a business and a business. Like there is a reason why I want to work with Monique because she gets me. There's a reason why I want to work with the mindful techie because there's alignment. If it's just, haphazard, this is this. I mean, I believe that's where the miss is for these situations. So I would just stop. If you're getting rejection after rejection, I'd go back. I'd think about my why. I'd go deeper, within myself and try to figure out, okay, there must be a different way to really connect with people. And this is not the way, but I would stop reaching out to people until I figure that out.
Okay, yeah. Awesome. So thank you for sharing that. So I want to talk about the book, but is there anything more you want to say about this mindful connector method and how you do this authentically in the current environment? Anything else you want to say about that?
Yeah, I think I just wanted to reiterate first, go deep on that why, in the moment that you're going deep, it may be a stretch, but, I always like to tell people that you need to have this connection, intention, vision, right?
Yes.
And really it's almost like, there's this phrase that goes, write the vision and make it plain. It's the same concept. You have to write that out. But, don't just write it, you got to meditate on that thing. Like, why am I doing it? It will self-automate after a while. Once you do that, I mean, it really does set the tone for how you believe you want to make critical connections. The second thing is that in our lifetime, we'll encounter critical connections, right? And critical connections that amplify who we are at our core, which
Yeah.
is like Mr. B, you know, Mr. M, we'll encounter those things. And even if early on you don't know what's really happening when you connect with that person, I talk about that in my book, this whole critical nine, finding these 9 critical people who have been instrumental in your life, and start thinking about who those persons are, and then figure out how you can add value to their lives.
Yeah.
And so this whole finding these 9 people, and there's a reason why I picked 9, but is often changing, and that will change throughout your career, throughout your professional life. So that why is going to have to be really clear. So those are some really key points that I would like to share, and that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Okay. So I wanted to ask this. Something came up for me as you were sharing that. You mentioned your nonprofit background. A lot of folks that tune into this show are change makers. They're purpose driven. A lot of folks are working in B Corps or purpose driven businesses or nonprofits where they are doing fundraising or sponsorships. And I know that this particular time of the year is critically important for a lot of nonprofits that are engaging in fundraising between now and the end of the year.
Yeah.
Does the same approach apply in terms of how you're reaching out and building connections with funders or sponsors?
Yeah, it does. I mean, that's the great thing about the mindful connector method. Those 3 steps, you can use them in different scenarios. I think it's really important to understand why an organization is connecting with a corporate, funder, or, a foundation, a private funder. Understand why you want to do that, be clear about what that intention is, and then just really assessing what's mutually beneficial, because that company, that corporation is going to want to know, why am I giving you this money? What is the alignment? What is that mission critical thing that will have me write that check for this? And then, last, like, how do we maintain this relationship? What's that engagement strategy going to look like? That's the connection side of things. It's not rocket science. It is just, it's just an approach for really going deeper and thinking about it. I mean, and I think it scares people a little bit, because I think people just, when people say I network and you go into network, it's a word now, people use it. I just think that you have to sit in that for a little bit and really go a little deeper, figuring out what your why is, so that you can cultivate in the way that you need to cultivate, and then looking and thinking about what's critical, assessing that, looking okay, what's the mutually beneficial agreement arrangement that we're going to have to make this connection really, really work. And then lastly, just really like focused on, what am I going to do to sustain this? What's the engagement? Like, how often do I need to do this, based on whether you're a CEO or you're somebody on my, at my level? Like, what does that look like? And I think those things are important, and it's a process. And sometimes, I'm an extrovert. A lot of people who aren't extroverts don't do this. I mean, I coached a woman who was an introvert, and I took her through this process, through an 8-week session, and she was blown away, but only because she just hadn't thought about doing it that way, because that's not her natural bent. But it was so clear, and she got value out of it immediately, about that, thinking deeply about what those connections really meant. And she ended up, really getting value from that. And that's all I want. Hey, let's win in these relationships, okay?
Yes, winning. And
yes,
something else I wanted to note is just to tie this to a previous conversation that we had with career coaches and a training that I did, sort of sharing my wisdom as a hiring manager. I think the same probably applies to hiring managers too, right? So I think part of the frustration that some job seekers are experiencing has to do with hiring managers that aren't clear about what they want, right? They haven't taken the time to get clear about that why. They haven't taken the time to get clear about what they want and who they want and what they want the outcome to be of actually hiring that person. And the result is an unclear job description, an unclear and really, unprofessional process that just frustrates everybody. And you end up wasting time and resources, because one of the most expensive things an organization
Exactly.
undertakes is having an open position and then actively recruiting for that position, right?
Exactly. There's so much behind all of that. Like there's so much behind what you just said. Because so let's give the hiring managers some, some reprieve here, okay? Because a lot of times systems, processes, or the way companies do things is just how they have to roll. Some of them may have the autonomy to step out of that space and really look to hire and fill these roles in a very different way. And I'm hoping that now, especially now during this whole COVID season of ours, that hiring managers will be able to have that ability to step out of that and really look at people differently when they're trying to fill these roles, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's all about who's getting hired and why, and do we have enough talent and diversity out? Okay, let's give our hiring managers a little more autonomy to do the work in such a way to look for the right people for these roles. And I think all of that you're saying is really going to would really work. So the mindful connector method it really is a transferable, easy method. It's not rocket science. I am just living my life right now. This is who I am. This is what makes me happy. And so I do it naturally, but I wrote the book, I created the method for people who just didn't do it the way I did naturally. And most people are out there that probably don't do this naturally. So,
all right. So
yeah,
awesome.
I mean, it'll work for hiring managers as well.
Well, perfect. So that's a great segue to the final segment, which is, so tell us briefly about this book that you have. How did you come about it? What's in it? How can people get it? Tell us all the good stuff about this.
Well, first of all, we know how it came about. Well, it was really intended to help. In the beginning, it was really to help, younger people, make disadvantaged, figure out a way of how to cultivate critical connections and how to do that so that they could win in life and in business, right?
So what's the name of it?
The name, Baby, Your Gift Will Make Room for You. And
Baby, your
that
gift
is just,
will make room
yes,
for
that's
you.
homage to my mother, who would always say, baby, your gift will make room for you. Don't worry about all that extra stuff. Okay. So this is how this whole thing, my life, my business, my career has been transformed by just functioning and doing business this way. And so yeah, it's out. It started with that premise of helping other people who weren't just naturally like me, in the connection perspective, do this well. And I believe that if those simple steps are practiced, you will get it. It becomes it self automates. Like you just kind of flow in that space. So you will have to take some time to kind of make it feel comfortable. So yeah.
Awesome. So people can go to Amazon to purchase their copy of it. It's in pre-order, but go to Amazon, pre-order your copy. Once it becomes available, you'll be able to get it automatically from Amazon. Of course, if you're Prime, you'll get it like lickety split.
Right.
So, yes. So we're excited about that. So tell us about how people can reach you, how people can work with you. They have questions, they want to hire you to help them with implementing this mindful connector method for themselves, for their organization, for their teams. How can they reach you to do that?
Well, you can reach me at very simple, MoniqueLaRue.com.
Okay.
Everything you need to know about me is MoniqueLaRue.com. I've got everything that I'm doing at any point in time in my life, and I try to make sure I keep that updated. But yeah, I mean, or you can email me at Monique@MoniqueLaRue.com. You'll see all the wonderful projects I have going. Big ups to my micro, small, and solo business owners. I love you guys too. This is important for your work as well, as business owners. And so, yeah, so you can learn more about me there. or look me up on LinkedIn and let's have a conversation about why we're connecting.
All right,
First.
awesome. So tell us about that. And we see folks, Robert says he's a Prime member. He's going to
Yay,
purchase the book.
Robert!
So
I like
awesome.
Robert. Robert's my friend.
Awesome. And Robert and I have connected as well. So I'm excited to see that he
Yay.
is part of the conversation. And, I don't know that we consciously followed this method, but it was one of those things where it's like, okay, so like we were clear about like why we were connecting, and exploring and so on and so forth. So I think those things work when you're trying to find a mutually beneficial way to be of service to one another. So I'm grateful.
Yes.
And maybe it's your influences rubbing off on me.
I'm excited.
So tell us, is there, if there's one thing that you could leave our audience with before we sign off today, as it relates to anything we discussed today, what is it that you want people to walk away with?
I will say this. Case in point happened to me today. When you're making connections, or when you have had a critical connection you've made, or some connection you've had, try to look beyond the person in those connections, right? Because sometimes, you have to go beyond that and just kind of think outside of that space in order to really keep that critical connection intact.
Yeah.
Because, anything can happen. But looking beyond that, understanding and knowing your why will always bring you back to, it doesn't matter what happens in the relationship and the connection, but that, you understood your why, you have mutual agreement, and you're good. So I would leave that one thing, always be looking beyond that person and understanding that they have other things going on in their lives. And so when you're making this critical connection, you want to make sure that you assess that. So that's what I will leave with. That's,
awesome.
That's it.
Well, we appreciate you for that. And, just knowing that whatever happens, if you're leading from your why, that you are leading from a place of integrity, and you can feel good about that regardless of what the outcome. And something else I would add to that too, is that sometimes it's, to your point, other people have things going on like right now, and it's just not the season, right? And so don't get your energy bent out of shape about, expecting something. Let the universe do what it's going to do.
Exactly.
You put in your work and then you step away. So like planting a garden, you plant the seeds and then you walk away, and you tend to it and water it and take out the weeds, but don't be going to dig up the seed trying to figure out what's going on.
Exactly. Don't dig up the seeds now.
Like, is this thing growing, staying on, or what's going on?
Right. Don't throw all that cultivating away.
Exactly.
You got to plant and do all of that in the cultivate stage. You don't want to dig that up.
Awesome.
Yay.
Well, thank you so much, Monique, for joining us for this conversation. For the folks that are joining us today, awesome. Yes, it was indeed awesome. For the listeners, for the folks that are tuning in, whether you're watching the live or you're watching the replay, I want to thank you for joining this conversation. And I want to invite you to love, like, share this conversation with someone, tag someone who you know that can benefit from this conversation, and make sure that this wisdom, these pearls of knowledge are being shared with someone. Let's love up on Monique, or pre-order the book if you can, if that's going to be useful for you. Reach out to her through our website if you are interested in learning more or following up with her. And until next time, this has been Miko Marquette Whitlock with Mindful Techie Tuesdays. Thank you so much for joining us. Look forward to seeing you next time.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye-bye.